Shit my dad taught me. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Jim Germanakos.
Yep.
AKA Jim Monaco.
Right.
Thank you for coming, man. We really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
this is an honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you. It took me forever to get here. It was like, God, it must have like 7 minutes. Yeah,
That's dedication. Appreciate it. Dedication. Yeah, we got a pretty great guest here today. We had a little quick conversation before we got going, and we're going to cover a bunch today. So buckle up.
If people are watching on video, they probably recognize him.
Yeah. Well, here, let's do. So we have a tradition where we do a chat GPT to introduce our guest. We don't just go off the hop with it and see if it gets everything. So I'm going to read this out, and you tell me if chat GPT got it right.
Okay.
Jim is widely recognized for his transformation on the 4th season of The Biggest Loser, where he was the at-home winner, losing a remarkable 186 pounds. Wow. Following the show, Jim pursued a career in health and wellness, co-founding Weight Loss Twins LLC with his brother Bill, focusing on motivational speaking and helping others achieve their health goals. But there's a whole bunch before that. In addition, professionally, Jim has an extensive experience as a closed protection agent and senior investigator with the AFI MAC Canada, a role he's held since September 2018. He provides security and investigation services in both New York and Toronto, backed by a 50-state concealed carry license. Jim also has a long-standing career as an actor, represented by Maria Mann Agency in Toronto since October 2013, and he's participated in various television, movie, and commercial projects. And then I know before that, too, you had a whole career. Policeman, yep. New York City.
Well, I actually worked in Nassau County, which is the first county into Long Island. But what a lot of people don't realize is that Long Island includes Queens and Brooklyn, but people from New York call Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County, and Queens and Brooklyn are part of New York City. But yes, I worked in Nassau County. By the way, I want to make a little correction. The agent's name is Marla Mann.
Okay.
Marla Mann of Toronto.
What did I say?
Maria.
Oh.
But
that's an L. Yeah, that's on me. Yeah. ChatGPT got it right.
Yes. Yep. I was a police officer, and now I'm a professional actor. I can't really do too much protection work anymore, investigations work. I was working for David H. Koch from the Koch Industries, Koch brothers.
Whoa.
But so we had about 12 or 13 retired police officers with the family all over the place. And I could start, like I said, and they'd say, hey, you want to go to the Hamptons for the weekend? Yeah. You want to go to Wichita for the weekend? You want to go to London? Ontario? No. And so we all had go bags and suits in the back of our cars and stuff. And that was kind of a cool job. So I said, I can't come up here and what am I going to do? Get a hotel? I'm not like jumping all over her. And I said, nice seeing you. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And that's how our relationship started. But I was working, like I said, and because I had been working for the Koch family, I have White House clearance. I had West Wing clearance, a 50-state concealed carry. And up here, of course, nobody carries a gun here except for even cops off duty, which is ludicrous because you can't protect yourself up here. But you still have the mazzati, as we say in the Bronx, if you had to.
You need the protection. Walk down the street, you need protection.
Well, funny story. When I started dating my wife, when I met her in Connecticut, and she said, I'll go out with you. We were both divorced and single, not wearing rings. And I said, why are you single? And her sister said her idiot husband cheated on her or something to that effect. And I said, what? He was tired of driving a Lamborghini, wanted to try driving a Chevy. And she's like, did you just make that up? I'm like, yeah, I'll go out with you, but you got to come to Burlington. So I said, I love Burlington. She goes, you know Burlington? I said, yeah, I love Burlington. How much time you have for me? And she says, I can give you like 3 hours every other Saturday. I said, why every other Saturday? She said, because I have my daughter the other Saturdays. I'm like, oh, makes sense. I'm not going to bring a new guy into your daughter's life. I said, I'll leave my house in Queens at 2:30. I'll pick you up at 5:30 for dinner at 6:30. We can get a chance to talk. She said, great, where are you flying into? And she goes, you would come all the way to Burlington. I said, yeah. Where would you fly into? I said,
Vermont.
What do you? Yes, so my 2008 Tacoma, which I refused to give up, now just went over 600K, 360,000 miles of commuting back and forth. And people would say to me, you're driving 8 hours to take your girlfriend to the keg, and then you're driving home same night? I'm like, yep. But yeah, that's how it all started. I met my wife when I was singing, and she was sitting by herself. at a casino lounge in
Oh.
Connecticut.
Hold up, you're a singer too?
Yeah, I sing Sinatra. I came in second in the country in the Sinatra Idol contest, and I got a booking agent after that. So it was just me and a keyboard player. We're doing Sinatra in a lounge, and she's sitting by herself in a hotel casino. And I'm like, look at that beautiful lady. She's by herself. My buddy goes, she's a prostitute. I'm like, you think she's a prostitute? He says, we're in a casino hotel in the New York City area. She very well may be. But if that's a prostitute, she's going to be a fortune. So when I went to talk to her, I said, what are you doing sitting here by yourself? And she says, well, I'm on vacation. I don't gamble. My sister's gambling. And I went, yes. So that's how it all started with me coming to Canada. And when I came up here, the first time I stayed with her overnight, I asked her, I said, can I stay with you next week for the whole week? I hadn't stayed over yet. And her sister had the problem with that. She's like, you come up, you take her out to dinner, and then you go home? Yeah. Are you married? I'm like, am I married? Why would you say I'm married? How come you're not trying to stay over? And I'm like, I don't know. That's sort of up to her, you know, and she's never dragged me into the house. Well, maybe she thinks that you're going home to your family. My wife didn't think that. It was her, the sister, that thought that. So when I asked my wife, can I stay with you next week? Really, for the week? Now, mind you, she's been alone for 8 years. Nobody's ever cooked her dinner in 8 years. She dated a guy for a few months in Quebec near her parents. She's French-Canadian. So I said, well, I want to take the investigator's course to get my private investigation protection license up here, so my New York office will pay me as an international investigator and agent. So I'll make more money wherever I am. I says, I promise. I get out of class at 4. You get out of work at 5:30. I'll have dinner on the table by 6. And she said, well, dinner on the table? I said, yeah. She goes, what's your specialty? I said, seafood Alfredo with shrimp, right? Roasted garlic broccoli, pumpkin pie. She was like, yes, yeah. So the first day this table was made, right? I went out to the dollar store, got some stuff, some candles, and she was into it. And the second day she came home from work, and I had done her laundry. So her laundry basket was on the table by the back door, and she came in and she said, my laundry, my laundry. And that was it. By the end of the week, she said, you could stay.
That's awesome.
And now here I am. We're married 8 years.
That's amazing, man.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Where did it all start? Where'd you grow up? What was that like?
I'm from the Bronx, and when we were teenagers, we went to Long Island. My dad had a restaurant in Brooklyn. I used to commute to St. John's, and I studied communications. I went to work in radio and television for the New York Giants, which was fun. At the time, I had Jets season tickets. My license plate said My Jets, MY space Jets. Went to work for the Giants, and they said, you can't come to Giants,
Park at the subway.
events. So then I said, well, maybe I could find My Giants, but that wasn't available. So I gave my wife my Jets, and I took Nice Putt, which was funny because when I became a cop, once a week they would change the license plate to Nice Butt with a black Sharpie, which was annoying the crap out of me. So one day I said, you know what, if there's somebody that's got such a nice butt that they put on their license plate, I want to see it. So I ran the plate, and it came back to a young woman in Schenectady. I'm like, good thing she's not closer. So I went from working for the Giants. I was at the Super Bowl in '91 when Scott Norwood for the Bills missed the field goal, pushed it right. And the funny thing about that is that I'm there with the company. So we're sitting on the 40-yard line, 18 rows off the field. I'm sitting with celebrities. John Travolta was sitting in front of me, and comes down to this kick, and my hands are shaking. And I'm like, I don't know which way to root. And my boss says, what do you mean? If he misses it, we win. I said, yeah, but if he hits it, I hit $7,500 in a Super Bowl box. So which way do you root? I was rooting for the money. So then he missed it. The Giants won, and I said, but yeah, then I became a cop. And from the time that I was a cop, I had Giants season tickets for all these years. And a few years ago, when I felt that they kept Eli Manning in for 2 or 3 years too long, I gave back the tickets. My kids were using them for a while, but when the kids aren't paying for the tickets, they don't appreciate them, because my kids are in their 20s, and my oldest is 30. And I said, if you guys want the tickets, you got to pay for them. You guys are adults. $2,000 for each of you. They were like this, like, what?
They actually cost money.
Yeah, right. But one day they didn't go to a game because it was raining, and I thought my head was going to fall off. I was like, you didn't go to the game that I paid for because it was raining? Did you sell the tickets? No. You know the feeling.
Yeah.
You know? So now I can go to a Bills game occasionally. But what's funny is that last year, a commercial that I did for Intuit Tax Time, MailChimp by Intuit. Intuit was one of the big Super Bowl sponsors. And whenever I have a new commercial that comes out, everybody that sees it sends me a text message. And sometimes I make fun of my friends. I'm like, listen, you're a barber. Every time I see a guy with a haircut, am I going to text you and say, did you cut this guy's hair? You know, but it's fun for my friends to see me. But last year, my commercial came out on the day of the first wild card playoff game. And it was on once a game for the entire football playoffs. And it was the last commercial break before the kickoff of the Super Bowl. And that's pretty cool. So every week, my phone would get 30 or 40 texts and, you know, thanks, whatever. This Super Bowl, I'm watching the American version on my Fire Stick in Jimmy World in the basement, and I'm taping the game upstairs, but I want to see the commercials from the States because they're always great with the celebrities. Justin Trudeau doesn't want the American commercials. I get it. They want to see the Canadian commercials. So in the fourth quarter, I went to the bathroom, and I came out of the bathroom, and my buddy Doug Martin says, did you do a commercial for Google, like Gemini, Pixel 9 or something like that? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, you missed it. And I'm like, it was on just now? I'm trying to figure out how to rewind. Can't rewind live TV on that thing, whatever. My phone goes crazy, berserk. So I had a 15-second commercial on the Super Bowl, but I only saw me for like a second and a half. But yeah, it's like the holy grail of being a commercial actor is making it onto the Super Bowl.
That's pretty awesome, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even a couple weeks before the Super Bowl in Canada, I saw you had 2 different commercials that aired within like the same 10 minutes for another company on TV.
Well, right now I probably have that are still running about a dozen commercials. I have Spectrum, Verizon Wireless, Midas, Green Shield Insurance. What was this last one? A Stonefire Naan Bread. That was one of my favorite commercials ever.
You need the insurance one to take off because you need to be the next Flo.
Did you see that was a comment that I made?
Oh, yeah?
And I said it to the client. They were like, Jim, you were hysterical. And I'm like, do you know who Flo is in the insurance commercials? I want to be your Flo.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, you never know. But it was a lot of fun. And even in the commercial, the women were sitting at a diner, and the women in the booth next to us are complaining about aches and pains about getting old. So the one girl says, I have so many medications, I have to have a pill box. And the girl sitting with me says, you think that's a pill box? This is a pill box. And she's got like a month's worth, you know, like the one I have at home. But then the girl sitting across from her says, well, my husband won't let me come to bed unless I get a CPAP machine. And then I say, I used to have to go to the bathroom every 90 minutes, but now it's every 60 minutes, excuse me. And I take off from the table, which is funny. And the guy sitting next to me, the other actor, says, you got to go, Jimmy. And he uses my name, but it was so funny that they just kept it. So every time I see somebody now, they're like, want to know where the bathroom is? I'm like,
Smart ass.
Thank you. Yeah. But it's fun. It's fun for your friends to see you. And like I had a part in the Donald Trump movie that was that just came out before the election, The Apprentice. And I play a true-to-life mobster from the 70s that he dealt with when he was building his first big hotel, Al Formicola, who was a Colombo family associate, and he was the vice president of the Hotel Association in New York. When we first saw the premiere of this movie, I had 3 scenes and then the wedding scene. They cut all my scenes out because evidently the Trump people, they cut all totaled like 6 of my minutes out and 19 minutes total because of things that Trump people didn't want to see. But if you guys saw the movie, there was a scene where he actually gets like physically sexual with Ivana, his wife. And they kept that in the movie, and they took out Al Formicola because they didn't want an association with the mob.
Yeah.
But the mob made it very clear with Sammy the Bull Gravano from the what the heck is the family? I can't remember now. But Sammy the Bull Gambino, the Gambino family guy, who's very is like a celebrity now. When he first testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee about the organized crime in New York, the one thing that they said, even to this day in interviews, is that they could not get Donald Trump in their pocket. So because he wouldn't be friends to the mob, meaning giving them contracts and payoffs and everything else, that they charged him more than they charge the average person because he refused to be friendly with the mob. So he wasn't that guy, you know, but he did, back in the 70s, he did get a big $150 million tax break because of the fact that his lawyers, who at the time it was Roy Cohn, who in the movies played by Jeremy Strong, Roy Cohn fought for the fact that we want a tax break. We don't want to pay $150 million in taxes because we're rebuilding Times Square. We're rebuilding Grand Central Station. This is going to be the biggest project ever in New York. So I did a lot of research about this part that I'm playing because I want to know exactly, you know, why these people were involved. And it was very interesting. And it was fun to work with Jeremy and Sebastian Stan. And Sebastian Stan, when I saw him, I said, buddy, your character in the Hot Tub Time Machine, he was the bully. I had a friend that was you back then in the 80s. I love that movie. That was great. He's like, my God. He goes, that was like 20 years ago. I'm like, was it 20 years ago? You lose track after a while because he's in his, I guess, mid-40s now, Sebastian. But when I met Jeremy Strong, I said, how you doing, Jeremy? Jim, Monaco. He's like, Roy Cohn. I'm like, that boy. He's in character already, you know. But some of these guys, they're in character for the whole month. You can't get them out of it, you know. So when I left the set after my week or two, whatever I did with him, I said, Jeremy. He didn't turn. I could see he went like this. And I said, Roy. And he turned around and I said, it's nice working with you. Hope to see you again. But yeah, you know what? He's very successful.
That's pretty cool. What's been your favorite role that you've played in a commercial or a movie or a TV show?
I got a couple of awards in Canada for my role as the lead detective in a movie, Cry of Silence, which is on Prime right now. We use Canadian actors, so if you want to see the movie in the United States on Amazon Prime, you have to use a VPN. But I play the investigator, and what's funny is I got the screenwriting credit on this as well because I changed the script so many times. The script was great. The people are great. It's Alan Cool Productions, and his wife, Robin, and she was the screenwriter. Got a lot of awards for this, but she doesn't know police lingo. She doesn't know police, you know, she doesn't know what we would say, what we would do, you know, how we would go about doing it. So as I read the script and as we came upon these scenes, I said, I would never say this. She says, well, say whatever you'd say. So I said, okay, good example. I'm sitting in my office. They built a beautiful police office and stuff. They even had pictures of me in my real uniform with my real wife, you know, up on the wall and stuff, you know, with me wearing tactical or whatever when I was young, which you can see if you look for it. Like my wife's like, oh, here I am, you know. But I'm sitting there doing my work and the police commissioner comes in and says, how many bodies you got lined up now? Three bodies out there. The people want you to do something. Bring somebody in already. And the line that I'm supposed to say is, don't you want me to find the guilty party?
Too scripted.
Never say that. So I say, and I'm not hiding my accent, even though we're in St. Mary's Police Department, I say, you want me to just drag somebody in off the street? Or you want me to find a sick fuck that's doing this? And she says, don't get nasty, don't get wise with me. So then now every time you do a scene in a movie or TV series or whatever, there has to be 4 or 5 or 6 different views of these exchanges. So one is going to be with the 40, you know, lens on you. Next one is going to be from behind the 3 of us. Next one's going to be from behind me. Next one's going to be through the curtains. So there's all different views of this exchange. So when it came time to do the next camera change, he said, Jim, you all set? And there's a script coordinator that's holding the script in a 3-ring binder. And she's, anytime we improvise, which I love to improvise, even in the the Apprentice movie with Trump, the only line I have was improvised, and he loved it. So then she was writing down, like, then she has to go back to the laptop and say, what did he say? Sick fuck. All right, so she's rewinding, and she's writing it down like this. That's okay. Then she goes back. She's comparing her notes. Okay, we're good. Okay, Jim, you ready? You know the line? I'm like, what's the line again? Sick fuck. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's right. So then you have to put it all together. So that was a lot of fun, and we got an award for the interrogation scene. I'm interrogating the one of the murderers, and I wrote a lot. Oh, I didn't write a lot of it. They wrote most of it, but I changed a few things because it's stuff that I would say. There's even an interview scene where I have all my questions written down on a pad, and I'm asking the victim's husband, "Do you know what she was wearing when she left today?" And then they said, "Cut for a second, Jim. Can you do this without looking?" I'm like, why would I do that? When I'm a police investigator, I sit in the office, I write down every question on my pad that I'm going to ask so that I know how to narrow it down. It's like 20 questions, right? You know what you're going to ask to get down to the next, piece of information. So I have a pad in my hand, and I'm going to read it just like I would if I was really, interviewing somebody. Do you remember what she was wearing when she left? And what was the last time you saw her? And what time does she usually get home? And it worked out great. That's exactly the way it would be if I was a cop investigating. But the one funny thing was, we find a body in the woods, one of our bodies. The victim before the girl who played the victim is a beautiful young woman named Olivia Hammond. And she refused to be found dead in the forest on the ground. Why? Because the people that are finding her are on horseback. So I'm scared of horses. What? You're scared of horses? Yeah. I'm not laying down. What if they step on me? Okay. Everybody take 10-minute break. So we have to figure out how to find her without putting her on the ground as a victim where she would be dead. Like, do you have any ideas? So then somebody says, well, why don't we just kind of lay her over the fence over here where some sick fuck would have put her over the fence and so that she's half standing up. All right, sounds good. Jim, you all right with that? Why do I care? I just come upon a body. I don't care what position it's in. I've done it in real life dozens of times. But in this particular case, this beautiful young woman is now found naked. So before they lay her over the fence, I'm standing in front of her and I'm talking to her, and the makeup people are putting some makeup on her, and they're like, "All right, everybody ready? Okay, everybody turn around." And I'm just looking at her like this, and then she takes off her towel or whatever she was wearing, her smock. She's like, "A Jim?" And I'm like, "Oh, turn around." Because now she's got to lay over the fence. But I'm like, "You've seen one, you've seen them all." Jesus Christ. So then when we find her, the dead body, right? I say to one of my, we're looking with flashlights, and I say to one of my detectives an improvised line. I say, "Did you notify?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "We got to find this guy, And then we continue to look. Once your lines are over, you don't cut. You have to play like you would be investigating. So you keep looking around, whatever. You let them decide when they're going to cut. So at the end of that session, the end of that filming, the director and the producer, they just happen to be talking about it. They come over to me and they say, "Jim, you added something in there. You asked, did you notify? What did you mean?" I said, "Every cop that watches this movie will know what I meant." "Well, what did you mean?" I said, "Did you notify crime scenes? Did you notify district attorney? Did you notify detective bureau? Did you notify morgue wagon? Did you notify, medical examiner?" "Well, how about the family? Would you notify the family?" "Never." "Why?" "Well, because the family may be involved. They may be the murderer." Oh. So it's like they're learning about police work from me, and they didn't really have a police consultant there. I was like the consultant because they're checking with me. Would this be right? Would that be right? So that was great. One of the funnest things about filming that was the fact that we became the St. Mary's Police, and St. Mary's is near London, Ontario. But St. Mary's has never had a real police department. The thing is that they had patches made that said St. Mary's Police. And I said, well, I mean, I'm not a patch collector, but I have some police patches. But I think it's the coolest thing. I have some St. Mary's Police patches for a department that's never existed. So when I run into a guy here in Halton, in Burlington or whatever, and I say, hey, you got a patch? He's like, yeah, I got some patches. Are you a collector? He's like, yeah. So I gave him a one from Nassau County in Long Island. And I said, you know what? You're going to like this more than, I mean, I have one. I'm going to give you one too. I forget the guy's name, big, tall guy. So I'm like, here, let me go. I went to my car. I took it out of the plastic bag. And because for me, it's a collectible. Besides for the fact that the movie won 80 awards, you know. And I hand him the patch. And he's like, what's so great about this? St. Mary's Police. I said, there's never been a St. Mary's Police. This was made for a movie that I was in. He's like, oh, okay. Like for him, I should have just taken the patch back.
Yeah.
He didn't give two
Didn't
shits
mean
about
nothing to him.
That's it. But yeah, some of these parts, I did one called Fear Thy Neighbor, a TV series about two neighbors that fight over their property line. So I'm playing a cop that responds to deal with these guys for the whole hour episode. It's just like the two families and me as the cop. But this is a docudrama where the actual cop is telling the story, and then I show up as him. And his name is Captain Tommy Merricks, and it was the Danville Police Department in Virginia. What happened was nobody told me this was the docudrama, so I learned every line, like I studied every line that he's actually saying as the actual captain, telling the story about the thing, and I'm learning these lines. And when I get there, they had told me, well, no, this is docudrama. That's what he says. And then you act as him, you act out the scene. I'm like, all right, I haven't gotten a script. They're like, okay, don't worry about it. So I call my agent. I'm like, this thing is next week. I haven't gotten a script. All right. 2 days before, I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I don't have a script. I don't have sides. I don't have anything. I don't have a script. Maybe they'll give it to you on the set. And I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be a problem because usually it take weeks to memorize all this stuff. So I show up and like, all right, I'm sitting there like this, like sometimes you're what they call SOC, which means silent on camera, but it'll say on your contract, SOC. So you're just like, it's as if Chris right now, you're SOC and I'm talking, you're SOC. Okay. I show up and they're like, all right, Jim, you're up. I have the St. Mary's patches on. I got my police uniform from Nassau County with different patches on the jacket. I got my regular gear, which is mine from being a cop. And I go up there and I'm like, you guys know I don't have a script, right? They're like, yeah, didn't you just recently retire from the cops? I said, yeah. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a police assignment. You're going to handle it like a cop. That's your script.
Just wing it.
I'm like, this is great. I love this. So I said, all right. He said, Jim, you're going to start in the car about 200 meters away. We're going to give you, I have a radio, a walkie-talkie. We're going to give you a police assignment. Okay. Hey, Jim, you on the air? Yeah, I got you. Okay, you're responding to a neighbor dispute. That's all we got. Okay. Where do you want me to park? Or where would you park? I'd park in the street. I park in the street. So I pull up to the house. I park in the street. I get out of the car. I reach in, get my hat, put my hat on, close the door, and they say, cut. Like, that was my whole scene? And they said, no, can you just get out of the car with your hat on and save a couple seconds? I'm like, no cop ever in the history of cops ever drove with his hat on. Even these guys that wear these Smokey the Bear hats, the state police, whatever, nobody drives with their hat on. You get out of the car, you put your hat on, you cover, they call it a cover. You put your cover on. Okay, and for that one, in Hamilton, they actually had a consultant, police consultant. We're laughing because nobody knows anything but me and him. Okay, so I go back in the car. I go back. All right, take two, everybody. We're still, slate. And I come up and I get out of the car, put my hat on, and I come walking up. I'm like, how you doing, Captain Tommy Merricks, Danville Police? What's the problem? And it just starts. This guy's on my land. He thinks he could park his truck on my land. And it goes back and forth. I said, clearly, this is my property. Like, they're going back and forth. And I'm just like this. And, they're arguing. And I'm just waiting as if I would. I want to hear both sides of the story. Well, what are you going to do about it, officer? Oh, well, this is a civil dispute. This is a civil matter. Get your, call your lawyers or go down to the town, bring your property, what do they call it? The survey, your survey, whatever. And then they will tell you exactly where this thing. That's your answer, officer? Well, yeah. What did you expect me to do? You want me to tow his car off your property because you say it's your property? Something to that effect. So I said, it's a civil matter. And I turn around and I walk away. And that was it. That's exactly what I would have said if I was a cop. So as it comes down to the end, I'm in the car. Jim, you know the deal. These guys have been fighting for 2 months. You've been there 5 times. You're responding to a shooting. Really? Who shot who? Jim, you're responding to a shooting. Action. So where do you want me to put the car? Because that's kind of important. I would never put the car in the driveway if I'm responding to a shooting. You put yourself at risk. You know, you're the first thing that everybody shoots at. And I've been shot at. I know, it's not fun. So they said, okay, bring it into the driveway. In the driveway? Okay. So I come tearing down the block. I hit the apron to the driveway. I almost break the car in half. I slam on the brakes. One of the handheld cameramen falls into the bushes. Cut. And I said, why are we cutting? Jim, are you crazy? You almost broke the car in half. You almost hit this guy. I said, I'm coming to a shooting. You're coming in hot. Well, come in a little less hot. So I come in a little less hot. And of course, every cop that saw it ever told me is like, man, you didn't come in too hot for that shooting.
That was lame.
So I get out of the car and I see one guy. His name is Herbert. He's standing. Herbert Snipes. He's standing on his patio. So I know he must be the shooter because I don't see the other guy. But they don't tell me who the shooter is. So I get out of the car and it's a pretty good scene for me. And I say, Herbert, don't move, Herbert. What happened? I shot Jerry Wilson. And the one thing that they didn't expect that wasn't in their mind was, where's the gun? That's the first thing I said was, don't move. Where's the gun? And he goes like this, like he plays along. He goes like this. I was with a partner. The partner, when I slammed into that driveway, was like, oh, God. But so we went to get the gun, and I'm holding this guy gunpoint. I go up the stairs, and I go to handcuff him. And then they cut. I said, Jim, any chance you can handcuff him any faster? I said, you know how fast I handcuffed him? This was like trick photography. I handcuffed him so fast. And the consultant said, yeah, pretty fast. I said, because I have to clear his jacket from his wrist. It's the wintertime, whatever. And I got I got speed cuffing. So then they're like, well, see if you can do it faster. I says, I'll tell you what I can do is I can get one wrist. And when I get the other wrist, that'll be an extra second or two. Doesn't Rich just grab the handcuffs? So it looks, then he'll still be behind him, but I don't have to actually take the time to put the second cuff on. The problem was every time he grabbed the handcuffs, he also grabbed my tie, which was a pull-off tie, like the clip-on, and he kept pulling off my tie. So in the episode, my tie comes flying off. But you know what? You just never know what's going to happen. It's like anything else. It's a lot of fun. So you never know what you're going to do. I just got a job today. I just booked a job today, an acting job. And if you guys have ever seen the series Reacher on Prime.
Yeah, great. That guy's awesome. He's a great.
Alan Ritchson.
Yeah.
And it's funny about Alan is
he just did a bunch up in Milton. The last season was done up in Milton, I believe, right?
Well, there's actually a back lot that's built in Pickering.
Oh, okay.
And the commercial that I did with the Green Shield, where I have to go to the bathroom, we did that in the diner that he made famous on Reacher with the peach pie.
Yeah.
It's actually a big back lot, like Universal Studios has a big back lot. This is a $20 million set with a police station, with a town hall, with a gazebo, the stores, and they built it just for the first few episodes of Reacher. Now they rent it out. I've seen several different commercials from there, but one of his people on his team, which this is a woman named Neely. She's a private investigator who was part of his 101st military team.
Yeah.
So she's getting her own show now.
Oh, okay.
It's an offshoot. I don't think that's anything I have to worry about saying because it's common knowledge, public. But Reacher, Alan Ritchson, and her name is Maria Stan or something. They go back and forth into each other's like situations. So I'm going to be playing a cop who worked with her dad back in the Chicago Police Department days. Now she's looking for information from him regarding some stuff that they're doing in Chicago. And what's funny is the part that I'm playing, the audition that I had to do involved me sitting at a computer. Mind you, I'm older. right? I'm a 50-plus-year-old cop. You know, back when a guy my age that sits and refuses to retire, overweight, sits in the bullpen or sits in the office, you know, has other people do my paperwork for me. Somebody get me a cup of coffee. Like, they like run the roost, you know. And this guy's sitting at his laptop and he plays a video, which was the Super Bowl Shuffle from 1985, when the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl. And you guys might not even be old enough to know this, but they did a video and they called it the Super Bowl Shuffle, where they were rapping. And Walter Payton had something that said, "My name is Sweetness. I like to dance. Running the ball is like making romance." You know, it's a Super Bowl Shuffle. And I'm singing along, and another cop comes in and goes, "What's that, TikTok?" And mind you, and I shut it off and I say, to another cop, I say, "This whole generation doesn't know our history in Chicago," which is true, because you guys might not know it, but you're not in Chicago.
For sure.
But this is 40 years ago. I remember it when they won, when Refrigerator Perry ran the ball, 350-pound running back, ran through people or whatever. And then Neely, who's the private investigator, comes in, and her dad was a big Chicago guy, so she was singing the song too. And my character says, "How do you know that song, little lady?" And she says, "My dad used to sing it to me when I was young." He's like, "Smart man." He's like, "Yeah, maybe you worked with him back then." This whatever the last name is Neely, but he's like, "Are you?" Maybe the father's name was Charlie or something. "You're Charlie's daughter?" And she's like, "Yeah." "Did you ever work with him?" He's like, "Oh, back in the day, the guy really knew the streets." So the whole point is that now she's coming to me. I'm a friend of her dad's who's passed a long time ago. But I was told, believe it or not, I'm only 5'7", and I was told that I got this job because my interaction with her and Reacher is going to make all the actors on the set are all short to make Reacher look tall.
And he is a monster. Like, this guy must be in the gym 4 or 5 hours a day. Like, he is jacked.
He's 6'1", 240 pounds shredded.
Yeah.
But in all the books, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's 28 books that have Reacher. There's 20 books of the series and then 8 offshoots. In all these books of Reacher, he's 6'6", 280 pounds. He's a monster. So now when you have a guy who's 6'1", who's portraying Reacher, you put short actors around him. Now he looks bigger.
Yeah.
Which makes total sense.
I would have never guessed he's 6'1". I would have guessed he was like 6'4".
Now he gained 30 pounds of muscle, shredded muscle, between season 1 and season 2. And they said to him in an interview, "How'd you gain so much muscle? Like, you must have gained 30 pounds. He's like, 33, solid. "How'd you do it?" He goes, "I was using bodybuilder steroids." And they're like, "What? Is that okay?" He's like, "Yeah, I don't, there's no rules. I don't have to pee in a bottle.
Yeah.
It's just NFL. You know, these guys use these drugs because they work." Man, that guy is big.
Oh, yeah.
He is big, you know. But whatever. I told my wife she's not allowed to come to the set.
So you got a ton of stories. Tell us some stories about your dad. Tell us about your relationship with your dad. Tell us some background about him.
Oh, man. My dad was 6'4", 350 pounds. In college, he played football in Brooklyn.
I would have guessed that looking at you. I would have guessed your dad was 6'4".
6'4". Well, see, for me, I have really big hands and I have size 12 shoes. And I think that I may grow a little more. Like I would just want to hit the 6 foot mark. But my dad was 6'4", my brother's 6'3", and they called him King Kong back in the football days. But he was a real gentleman. He had restaurants. He died in 1994. We had to extend the it was, instead of having a 2-day wake, we had to make it 3. We had like 2,500 people show up for this guy, and these are all people from the church, from Brooklyn. You know, he was just a gentleman who everybody loved. Family came from all over the world. My mom had to have like 4 sign-in books. And then my friends in the police department honored me by doing what's it called, with the motorcycles and
Brigade.
cars. Yeah. So when my grandfather, who hated police, when I first got on the police department, and "tusu," in Greek it means "I spit at you." And I'm like, "What?" And my aunt said, I'll tell you. I'll tell you later. He didn't like the police because of something that happened to him back in Coney Island at his restaurant. He dealt with some dirty cops who were probably mobbed up or whatever. But my friends did this. We must have had 25 police vehicles. Everybody who was off duty from every department, of all the guys I went to the academy with, motorcycles, cars, this and that. They had this procession, and they closed the parkway for my dad. They're not supposed to do that. It's only for for I guess for politicians or for whatever else. But I remember when my grandfather came out, he said he saw all the police vehicles, and my mom, God rest her soul, said he said to her, somebody important must have died, and she said, those are Jimmy's friends. That's for your son, you know. And then we must have had about a mile of people in the procession, and my friends and people. Every intersection there was a salute. And my grandfather sat at the window in the limousine and blew kisses to these guys. And then when we buried him, my grandfather kissed every single cop, about 30 cops on both cheeks. And he said to me, I'm glad I'm not crying when I say this, but he said to me, I'm sorry. And I said, what are you sorry for? He said, I'm just sorry that I never appreciated the police department because of what happened to me when I was young, but I guess there's always a bad apple, you know. But if you want to hear that story, my grandfather had a big restaurant in Coney Island called Scoville's. It was right on that boardwalk. You guys are familiar with Coney Island. It was like in New York City, that's where everybody, the rich and famous, partied and went to the beach on Coney Island. There's still an amusement park there, the original Nathan's. He was just a couple of doors from the original Nathan's. And the boardwalk was so busy that he made his whole money to pay all of his rent for the whole summer in his restaurant by giving Nathan's a chance to have a hot dog cart behind his restaurant on the boardwalk. Now, you could walk another 100 meters and go to see the Nathan's, but in case they wanted to catch the stragglers, there was a hot dog cart there. But this place had 8 bartenders on Friday and Saturday night, so the place was huge. I've found pictures of it online, Scoville's, back in the 40s or whatever it was, 50s. So one day, and it was a place where all the police brass would come. We call them white shirts or scrambled eggs because on their hats they have all the gold squigglies on their hat. We call it scrambled eggs. So one day all the bosses are in there, lieutenants, captains, inspectors, chiefs, and they're all sitting around, and a couple of cops come in and sit in the restaurant. And one of the bosses goes over and says to my father, get those guys out of here. We don't want to fraternize with them. This is our place. What do you mean? But their money is as green as yours. He's like, it's either them or us. Well, why? Why do I have to ask them to leave? Why don't you ask them to leave? If you don't, we're leaving. And we'll never be back here. So my grandfather went up to the cops and said, hey, fellas, you know, the way he described it to me, my aunt actually is the one that told me. I'm not really sure exactly why or how to say this, but all your bosses over there don't want you guys to be in here because this is they don't want to fraternize or whatever. So I want to ask you guys, maybe you could come to the back. I'll take care of you. And one guy almost turned the table over. You know, they were really mad. And then one of the bosses came over and said, hey, well, you watch yourself. You know, just get the hell out of here or whatever. And they were screaming at my grandfather, like, our money's not good for you? Listen, this is your business, not mine. My business, I want my business to run smoothly. Your bosses said that they don't want you. It's not me, it's them. Okay. So they knocked over a couple of chairs and they left. A couple of days later, my grandfather has the place closed and he hears the dogs barking. They lived in the house behind. So he did the peek around the corner because he heard noises, and there were 2 cops emptying his liquor room into a police car, burglarizing the place. Told the whole family, like Sebastian Maniscalco in his comedy routine, everybody down. Sent the whole family down, go hide in the back. And they left with the police car, came back, emptied the whole liquor room's 2 trips into a police car, emptied his liquor room. Dirty cops. So my grandfather went to one of at the time, they had a lot of friends in the cops, but you know, a lot of Irishmen back then in Brooklyn and in the Bronx. So they knew a guy from the Bronx, and he was a lieutenant. And my grandfather went to see him, and he said, I got burglarized. I think it was like $2,500 worth of liquor, which is like 40 grand now. He says, they cleaned me out before my weekend. I have to close the business. I can't serve a drink. Nobody's, you know, until I get liquor. And it was your guys that did it. And the guy says, I'll take care of it. So the same day, that night, the guy came over, said, how much did you lose? It's $2,500, whatever. Gave him the $2,500 in an envelope and gave him $7,000 in hush money. That's a lot of money back then. That's like 2 years' pay, probably 200 grand now. Who knows? My grandfather promptly moved out of Brooklyn, and they moved to the Bronx, 1149 Leland Avenue in the Bronx, where they didn't have a phone for 7 years. The house was purchased under my uncle's business name because my grandfather was afraid he was going to get killed by the mafia cops. And there were some, we all know, there's books out now, these guys that, so they didn't have a telephone for 7 years because he didn't want anybody to know where he went. And they sold the business to the owner of the property. And that was it. My grandfather hated the police. So when my father said, I'm going to try to get a job at the police department, and my granddad said, you're not going to live here, not in my house, not as a cop. They're all dirty. So when I became a cop, he spit at me, and then it wasn't until his son died that he saw the respect that came through the police department. But man, back then, you can kill a guy. They'd have killed you just for looking at you crooked,
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's a crazy story, yeah. Hey, I'm a storyteller.
Yeah. And then you follow that through and you do the timeline. So you're still in New York in 2001, right? You're serving at that point.
Yep.
What was that like?
Well, now you're talking about 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay. So on 9/11, I was off. Mind you, I was a cop in Nassau County. I was also a volunteer fireman in Massapequa. Yep, Massapequa, because I went from Elmont to Massapequa. And when the first plane hit, everybody, I mean, if the TV didn't say it's a terrorist attack, we all knew, especially when they said this is not a Cessna. And everybody sort of filtered their way to the police station or to the firehouse, because now this is the biggest fire ever, So we figured that we probably would get activated or whatever. My captain from the fire department called and said, come down to the firehouse. We're all standing by because they may need everybody's help. We don't know what the heck this is. I went to the police station where we got in a fire department bus, and the second plane hit. And we knew it. We knew it. So we were only about 30 miles from Manhattan. So we all headed there, and we didn't know what we're heading into. We didn't know anything about a collapse until we got to the Midtown Tunnel, and we were stopped in traffic. The only people that were waiting to cross into Manhattan were rescue vehicles. And the reason why we couldn't get in was because everybody had abandoned their cars in the Midtown tunnels. Now, if they're attacking New York, the buildings, they're going to go for the bridges and tunnels next. I totally agree. I would have ran my ass out of my car too. But what's funny is now all the tunnels are full. I think this at the time was 3 tunnels, and they open up two tunnels for incoming traffic in the rush hour. Then they open up 2 tunnels for outbound traffic for rush hour. There's always one going the other way. So what we find out, one of the supervisors says there was a collapse. What collapsed? I don't know. They just said there's a collapse. Be advised, send out the tones, mutual aid, whatever it is. What do you think collapsed? I don't know. One guy gets on the bus, and he's got a stack of 3x5 cards and a box of pencils. He says, all right, fellas, we need your name, address, phone number, next of kin, your religious beliefs, your blood type, and your lawyer's name, because some of us are going to die today. Just don't let it be you. Which was wrong, because none of us died, because we couldn't get there. What happened was, since the Midtown Tunnel had cars on both lanes, the Metropolitan Transit Authority, the MTA, what they were doing was they were clearing the tunnel by picking up cars with forklifts and flipping them onto the cars next to them, all the way in. While the other tunnel, they were towing them out, but they had to clear this tunnel quick. So they were just flipping cars for the whole mile. And I'm going in, and I'm like, who do you think's going to pay for that? There's a Porsche on top of a taxi cab and vice versa, Mercedes. Like, the cars are just flipped on top of each other, and then we get in. We got in, the collapses had happened already. So 18 years later, when I finally went to the museum, because I went to a lot of funerals, 51. I went to 51 funerals, even for guys I didn't know, obviously. I didn't know 51 guys that died, but at that point, we're just supporting each other. I knew about a half a dozen guys who were there. I'm so sorry. So I went into the museum, and I let my wife, my Canadian wife, and her daughter, I said, I'm going in. You guys go get lunch. I'll text you when I'm done. You don't want us to be with you? No. I'm looking for something. What I was looking for was a picture of these cars because it saved our lives. But at that point, once they got the rescue workers through the Midtown Tunnel by flipping cars on top of the car next to them, then that probably just became, let's get in as fast as we can. Anybody who's going to take a picture is either there already or doesn't care about what's going on because it has to get there. But they weren't letting anybody but rescue workers through the Midtown Tunnel, so nobody has a camera. Nobody's got a camera phone. Never saw a picture of it because as soon as they could open up the other tunnel where the cars were towed out, they opened up the other tunnel and then they worked on this thing. Never saw a picture of it still to this day. So when I sit in the sauna, the gym, or talking with, I have an accent, I know. People are like, so what brings you up here? I'm like, oh, the most beautiful girl I've ever met keeps saying yes to me. Oh, good. I'm a retired cop from down there. They ask, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a retired cop from Long Island. How long were you a cop? 22 years. You a cop during 9/11? Yeah. Oh, wow. Can I ask you some questions about it? So I say, if there's any questions that you can ask me that you haven't already had the answer to by 20 years of documentaries that you've seen on TV, like, what do you want? What do you want from me? Do you want to hear like a firsthand account of me seeing a jumper impaled on a flagpole, tied up in the flags? Or half a body, like you can't even recognize the body parts you're picking up? Like, what do you want to hear from me? You know everything about 9/11. All of us do. But, the one thing I can tell you about my experience there is back when I was a bartender for the Marriott before I, became a cop when I was in college. And then I worked until right before I went into the police department. I was still working. Even when I worked for the Giants, I was working a couple nights a week at the bar. And we opened up the World Trade Center Marriott. We trained the bartenders. Before that, we had done it for Times Square, which is called the Marriott Marquis. So all of us with experience, you guys want to go work in Manhattan for a couple of weeks? Yeah, show the guys the system? Sure. When I walked around from West Street, around where the Marriott was, and mind you, it's the whole place, the smoke is just starting to, all that smoke that you saw that chased people down the block, now the wind is pushing it south. So we get there. We came in from the north, so there wasn't a lot of smoke when we saw. And I went like this. Like, you guys saw pictures from above. When you look at it from below, a picture can't tell you what we saw. Like this, 110 stories high, as far as you could see both directions. Look at it, like, what are we going to do here? What are we doing here? Like, but the scariest thing sorry, I get the chills. The scariest thing for me was the sound of the fire department's air packs, because there was nonstop. One would go off to your right, Jesus Christ, anybody there, and then you're working on the pile, you're asking for direction. What are we going to do? We need dogs, we need quiet. There was sounds of rushing air or gas. There was little fires popping up. Every time you heard something, people would run off the pile. You heard, what the hell was that? But the spooky fire department packs that kept going off. Now, mind you, we were there. This is a couple of hours ago. They should have went off. So what's making them go off now? Was it somebody's face in the pack that's now disconnected? Was it dust that was holding the air in that's now become unlodged? But that was spooky. So, you know what? It was an experience that we don't like to think about and remember, but it was part of our history. The problem now is that, you meet these kids who weren't born yet, who don't even know about it. It's like, why isn't this taught? Why isn't, because it causes people to have a bias against certain people. The hell out of here. This is our history. I went to Waco, Texas, to see my daughter compete in gymnastics, the national finals, the Final Four, whatever they call it in her sport. She was an acrobat. She went to Quinnipiac University. And those of us, you guys are old enough to know, if you remember the Branch Davidian compound, David Koresh, all those people that were killed, the ATF shootout and everything. So I went to Baylor University to see my daughter compete. And at the time, being a private investigator, I had good equipment. So what I did was I didn't tell my daughter I was coming, and I hid all around the hotel, the restaurants, the venue where they were competing, were practicing, and I was taking a secret video that I was going to splice together to show them a clandestine video of them, how they behaved, hugging and laughing, and it turned out fantastic. You know, I know how to hide. It's like the bigger you are, I don't know, but they go into a restaurant. I'm sitting in the other side of the restaurant with my like, what are you doing, sir? But I have my camera on my dashboard running because when that bus comes up with them, I want it to be running. But I carried 6 batteries. I carried like 5 digital camera cards, and that thing would just keep running until the battery died. Then I would take out the card, I would put in a new battery, and I would just keep it running, just like I did if I was on a surveillance job. This kid comes up to me. He says, "Can I help you, sir?" I'm like, No, I'm good. He's like, "Are you going to stay here? It's not a parking spot." I said, "Well, no." I showed him my police ID. I'm not a troublemaker. I'm just, I'm waiting for the bus with the athletes to get here because I'm making a secret video of them. He's like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." So I said, "Yeah, my daughter hasn't seen me yet, and I'm just going to, once the thing starts, which is tomorrow, I'm going to go home. I'm going to splice this together, and I'm going to give it to them. It should be a lot of fun." "Oh, yeah. So what do you do? What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just assisting with parking because today is orientation day for Baylor University, all the incoming freshmen." I'm like, "Oh, that's cool. What year are you in?" He's like, "I'm a junior. I'm a 3rd-year history major." I'm like, "Oh, cool. History. Love it." So I said, "Since you're a history major, maybe you could tell me, how far are we from the Branch Davidian compound?" He went, "What? What was it called?" I'm like, "The Branch Davidian compound, David Koresh." It's about, at the time, it was about, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago. He's like, "Sir, I really don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, hold on a minute. And I get my phone out, put it on YouTube, and I'm showing him a video of the fire and the shootout with the ATF at the Branch Davidian compound. And he's in my passenger window. He says, "Can I hold your phone?" And he's going like this.
He had no clue.
History major, 21 years old, 3 miles away from the Branch Davidian compound. Had no idea. So what are these liberals teaching you? Now, I can get into an argument, make it politics, liberal, conservative, this and that. It's just that certain places, like in certain, the education system is a little wacky right now in the States. Who the heck knows what's going to happen with President Trump now? But this is a 21-year-old history major that didn't know that 79 people died 10 years ago, worldwide attention for 50 days.
3 miles away.
3 miles away. Yeah. So I had to ask a cop, "How far are we from there?" He goes, "Follow me, I'll show you." And he's like, out the window. He's like, "Right here." I'm like, "Where?" He goes, "No, it's flat now. It's nothing." So I'm like, wow. But just goes to show you, it's what are they teaching the kids now? They're picking and choosing our history, and I don't like it. So that was my story about it. But yeah, so that whole thing with 9/11, a buddy of mine that I used to go to funerals with, and one of the guys, you guys ever heard of I think it's Jonathan Edwards? He's a clairvoyant.
No.
He used to have a TV show, and he used to tell the future or read people's past or talk to the dead or something like that. There's another girl called the Long Island Medium. Her name is Teresa Caputo. She's a friend of ours, but this guy Jonathan Edwards is a well-known clairvoyant, which I think is really weird. But who am I to say that's not true? One day, about maybe 2.5, 3 years after 9/11, one of our close friends, Joe Hunter, was in Squad 188. He died that day, but he was supposed to be off, and we were supposed to play golf that day. My brother-in-law, Benny, was his best friend. The mom woke him up and said, "The job's on the phone. You want to come in for overtime?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, let's go." Took off, went into the city, and died. Left his wallet home. Like 3 years later, the family decides we're going to go see Jonathan Edwards' talk show. Because what Jonathan Edwards will do is he'll pull somebody out of the crowd, and he'll say, like, the gentleman wearing black with the beard, what's your name? Chris. "How you doing, Chris? Was your father's name Chris too?" "Yeah. Yeah, he's here." Like, that's the stuff he'll say. Like he sees the dead people or whatever else. So they decide to have a private reading with Jonathan Edwards for a half hour for $1,500 or whatever afterwards. Don't say nothing. We're not going to say our name. We're not going to say anything. They all sit around the table like we're sitting here. And Jonathan Edwards just kind of gets into his what do you call it? His
Spirituality.
just his mode. And then he says, "You're here because your family member died at the World Trade Center." Mother's like, "That's right." And then he says, "Well, he wants to tell his mother, thanks for keeping my wallet." What? And then she was like, I'm gonna pass out, you know. But he started telling stories to the point where they were all laughing. Mind you, they hadn't had a funeral or a service for him yet. They didn't find any part of Joe. So he told a story, and he's like, Joe is making everybody laugh over here. He's with his sister, I think. There was another family member who died in a car accident. And I think it was his sister. And the daughter of this woman that died, Joe's sister, I believe, lived with them in the house. But he says, Joe's making everybody laugh. Joe was a real Guido. You know, what you guys know about Guidos, what's that show for the Jersey Shore?
Yeah.
Jersey Shore.
Jersey Shore. That was Joe. He wore his white slip-ons. How you doing? He had his big chain on. Always smoked the Marlboro Lights, Guinea T-shirt, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
He was as Guido as they come from Long Island, whatever. And always smoked the Marlboro Lights. And what happened was the whole family went to England one day on a vacation. So Jonathan Edwards was talking to the family, and Jonathan Edwards says something to them about the fact that Joe was making everybody laugh up there in heaven. And he's mentioning a story about when you guys were all in England, and the family was like, oh. And some guy called him a fag. What's the story? And like, he wanted an explanation. It's like, oh my God, in England, they call cigarettes fags. So when the guy came up and said, can you spare a fag? All Joe heard was fag. He's like, who the fuck are you calling a fucking fag? He's like, no, mate, a ciggy. Can you spare a cigarette? And they laughed. He gave him a pack of American cigarettes. Everywhere you go in the world, they want Marlboros and Marlboro Lights. So he gave him a pack. They laughed. But after all was said and done, it was only a half hour. They planned a memorial service and a funeral. They laid him to rest because they found out. But the best part of that story is, I told you that his sister had passed away in a car accident. The daughter lived in the basement with Joe and his parents. He said to the mom and dad, your granddaughter, lives with you? He says, yeah. Meanwhile, the granddaughter used to say that she was downstairs playing with mommy and Uncle Joseph. And they were like, oh, that's cute. She probably has like a stuffed animal. This one is mommy and this one is Uncle Joe. But turns out, he says, your granddaughter who lives in your house? She said, yeah. She has the gift that I have. Oh, God, what? Turns out that she's actually talking to her mother and Uncle Joseph in the basement. So I'll talk to you about it after this. But yeah, her granddaughter has my gift. I have the goosebumps right now, and I've told the story 100 times.
That's pretty crazy.
But pretty crazy. So they laid Joe to rest. They did a little thing at the firehouse with a little eternal flame and all. But yeah, like I said, it's part of our history, and those of us who were there. My brother used to say, how do you guys run into fires when everybody else is running out? I'm like, no different than running into a shootout. You run into a shootout and everybody else is running away. It's part of the job. One of the last shootouts I was involved in, actually wasn't even a shootout. It was a drive-by. I just happened to be there, like close. And we're sitting surveilling a house in Freeport. As a matter of fact, Freeport, Long Island, and me and my partner were in plain clothes. We were driving a green BMW with black windows. It was a car that would go anywhere in the ghetto. We can go anywhere. And my windows were cracked open, and it sounded like it was right behind our bumper. It was like the sound of shots fired. Because that's all it sounds like in the street, is just sounds like claps. And I went, oh, shit, there's shots. And my buddy's like, what? And he's looking over. I'm like, we have shots fired North Columbus Avenue. Shots fired, we flip around, and some kid drives past us on a bike. He doesn't know we're cops, and we don't know that he's the shooter. He was shooting at this house from his bicycle and then took off. But we thought he was just running from shots fired. So we get there, and it's, we have one kid shot in the groin. He's bleeding out from femoral artery bleed. The family's like, he's got so much blood, put him in a bathtub. So we throw him in the bathtub, and my buddy's standing on the side of his groin. Saved his life, because he's
Keep pressure on it.
keep the pressure on it. The young girl. The matter of fact, I mentioned her earlier. She died. They were trying to drag her into the house, and that's where she died, right in the threshold of the doorway. I was trying to do. It's one of those things where, as soon as you pull up and you look, there's nothing you're going to do. So it's like, in the police lingo, it's a 1072 obvious. So that means death is nothing. Slow down the ambulance, but we do have a femoral artery bleed forthwith on the ambulance. All that stuff. It just becomes like second nature. We were involved in a shootout one day, and we went to court, and the family's lawyer said this happened to be I wasn't one of the shooters, but said to me on the stand, "So what did you do after this?" Or my client's, the son, they can't call him a victim because he was a bad guy. What'd you do after the shooting? I said, I went home and had pizza with my family and planned my weekend on the boat. I object. He's making a mockery of the court. I look at the judge and I'm like, what? So he says, could you be more specific? I'm like, well, Your Honor, that's exactly what I did. Officer, I think he meant immediately after the shooting. Oh, I rendered aid and called for assistance. You don't know what they want to hear. Yeah. But it becomes a big joke because you got a drug dealer who's shooting at cops and everything else, and the guy gets shot and killed, and all of a sudden it's everybody else's fault but his. But like I said, all that stuff, it becomes part of the job. There's some people are affected by different things. We had some really, really bad accidents that made worldwide news, like the wrong way driving. The guy's the wrong way on the Meadowbrook Parkway driving a pickup truck, and he hits a limousine that had a wedding party in it, and killed the driver, killed the 8-year-old flower girl, killed the bride and groom. Like, everybody was dead. And when I got there, my buddy was sitting against the guardrail crying, and he was never the same to that because he had a young child. The child was decapitated. He went from the back of the limousine to the front, and just his head, the child's head, the girl ended up in the cockpit with the driver, who was also dead. So how do you handle this? What do we do now? You got to wait you hope you got a supervisor that can sort of guide you. Okay, start a crime scene log, get some, make sure, do triage on the survivors, whatever else. The mother survived, the daughter died. So put her in the ambulance, but she won't let go of the child's head. Like, this is real life. This isn't a horror movie. So put the body with the mother. So we put the body on her lap. We wrap. She's holding the body in one hand and the child's head in the other, and she's just stoic, like. And I'm looking and I'm like, oh Jesus, this is worse than a horror movie. The accident itself was incredible. You look around, you're like, what are we looking at here? Like, what part of the car is that? There's such a 130 mile an hour guy on the gas hits a limo that's doing 70. That's 200 miles an hour. So, this is the stuff you see on the job. And then, so when people criticize cops, even nowadays, you see all these videos. I don't have to show you shit. You're violating my rights. You ever hear that? You ever see that on a video? Yeah, that happened to me too. I said, I'm not going to say please or thank you. I'm going to ask you one more time. I'll give you about 3 seconds. Give me your ID. You're under arrest. What am I under arrest for? 1, 2, 3. Okay, listen. You're under arrest. If you resist, then you're going to add the charge of resisting and obstruction. Okay? If you hit me back, then you're going to have assault or harassment. Turn around, put your hands behind your back. What am I getting charged with? I'll tell you in a minute. And now, all I have to do now is go back to my car, look in my wanted persons book. Okay, male white, 25 to 35, wearing a black baseball hat, white shirt with camouflage sleeves. That's you, right? It's Warren Stanley, attempted murder, Kings County, 2012. 2012, I was 8 years old. Well, you match the description. You should have showed me your ID. And that's police work. That's the way they should be doing it. If a cop stops somebody in the States and they say you're violating my rights, but it's a lawful stop for investigation, and you don't show an ID, It is so easy to match you up with someone who matches a description. If this isn't you, okay, then you better show me your ID or else you're under arrest for this charge. This is you. Right? It matches your description. Well, I wasn't in Kings County in 2012. Last chance.
Yeah.
So that's how the cops should be doing business. And you can't get in trouble. Cop can't get in trouble if I'm stopping you for a lawful reason. And you don't show me your ID, you're under arrest.
Make my job easy. Don't be an asshole.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Why? These people that they stop and they say, I don't have to show you a driver's license because I'm not driving, I'm traveling. I've heard that one on the internet. What do you mean? You're traveling. Who's operating the car? Well, I am, but I'm not driving, I'm traveling. Step out of the car. It's like, who teaches these people these silly things?
And two people sitting in the back seat with their phones on, recording them the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. You just have to know how to handle it. And even all these videos you see of all these shootings, these police, these idiotic cops shooting people dead because they've never been in a fist fight in their life. I'm from the Bronx. We learn to fight. We don't learn to skate. We don't learn to ride bikes. There's only so much stuff you could do in the city, but not for nothing. You become a cop, you better learn to take a punch and throw a punch. It's not video games. So when you got a guy that has a stick in his hand and you pull your gun, when you have a stick, you have mace, you have taser. Why on earth did you shoot this guy? And then he was running away, so you shot him in the back. Like, I agree with these people that I support the cops as hard as I could, as much as I can. But when you see a young cop with his hand shake, I'll shoot you. I'll shoot you. Well, why do you have to shoot him? Why don't you just go take the stick out of his hand and beat the hell out of him if he resists? Reasonable and necessary force. Why'd you shoot him?
Tase the guy.
Tase him. I'm telling you, taser and mace are the best. And if the guy wants to fight after you mace him, he can't see you. Knock his ass out with one punch, handcuff him, that's it. Reasonable and necessary force. All these cops have never been in a fist fight in their life. So they take out the gun first thing. Like, man, they better start boxing or something again in the police academy. So these guys can learn to throw a punch or do some martial arts or something. But I don't know, there's so much disrespect for cops now, it's miserable.
Yeah, like when we were raised, you were raised like, thank you, sir. Like, you walk by an officer, you're like, thank you, sir. Like, thanks for all you do. And nowadays, it's like kids are brought up and like they have zero respect for cops and they're flipping them off or they're like, throwing slander at them. It's shitty for sure.
Well, it used to be that if you cursed at a cop, you could charge them with disorderly conduct, which is a violation. Not a crime. It's sort of like getting a traffic ticket. But still, it's enough to identify someone. You bring him in if he's got a warrant or he doesn't have any ID. It's like stopping somebody without a driver's license on you. If you have a driver's license and you don't have it on you, doesn't mean you don't have a license. But if you're being difficult, I'll drag you in because I can't identify you. I'll give you a ticket that says you're unlicensed, but I have a license. Yeah, but you don't have it on you. How am I supposed to know that you have a license? So I'll write you a ticket, Jamie Kozub, and then you have to come into the station house and talk to the court and bring your driver's license with you. That's all. No big deal. I don't have to drag you out of the car and beat the hell out of you. Here's a ticket. Come into the station house with your ID. Show us that you do have a driver's license and your ticket will be expunged. What's so hard?
Yeah.
There's so many, these people that say, I identify as a cat. There's one cop on the internet that says, well, the last time I heard in California, cats couldn't drive cars. So I'm going to tow your car and then you can have your owner or whoever the hell else you have that, because the guy hands the cop his
cat collar.
His collar. Oh, God. But yeah, so that was fun. When I left the job, I was in the gang unit, and then it was organized crime. Our job was called the Community Response Unit, CRU, crew. And we were plain clothes. We did a lot of buy and bust, reverse buy and bust, drugs and guns and stuff. And people, my kids now who are in their 20s and 30s, like my oldest is 30, 31. He's like, Dad, are there any stories you didn't tell us when you were a cop? I'm like, dude, I didn't tell you any stories. I told you about garbage pails and minor car accidents. Like I told you I had a great night. Why am I going to come home and tell you about these nasty stories? So then you get into conversation with the kids and, Dad, tell us a story. Okay, how much of a story do you want? You want to hear some real good shit, or you want to hear just like okay, what was the scariest you've ever been on the job? Okay, that's a good question. Okay. Well, we had done a reverse buy and bust where we had a guy. We were in a hotel room pretending to sell drugs. We were on a phone call with a confidential informant. Our guy was a undercover cop from a different town, different police departments, because the people in your neighborhood, they start to recognize the cops. So we used to borrow cops from other departments, and he had a grill. This black guy came in. He was talking on the phone. So we locked this guy up. It's Christmas week for possession and distribution. I don't know. He's going to sell us drugs. So he said, I really want to get home to my family. It's Christmas. I can give you whatever you want. So when you have a small fish that's willing to give up a big fish, you always take it. Call the district attorney. You say, we got to make this guy a deal. Can we get him home tonight? Okay, what is he going to give us? He said he's going to give us whatever we want. Wait. When you say I'm going to give you weight, that means it's a lot of drugs that somebody can come up with. We can give you guns. Okay, so we put him on a Kel or a recording device, and he makes the phone call to a guy, and he's like, I got these guys in from Chicago. I don't know what they're doing here, but they have like 20 grand, and they want to buy coke. And the guy's like, well, let's just take the money and kill him. Okay, whatever you want. So now we tell him where, the guy says where these guys are. So we're in the hotel room or motel room, and the guy's pulling up outside, and we're inside. We got 3 motel rooms. I'm in the middle. 2 guys are ready to pounce from the outside. We got a surveillance truck that looks like a construction van right in front of the door. He's our surveillance. He's telling us, the guy's walking up. Okay, fellas, be advised. He just took 2 guns out of his waistband, 1 in each hand, and it's going in his pockets. Wearing an OD green camouflage jacket. Okay. I'm going to open up the door when this guy knocks. Okay. I have my gun in my hand, and I'm like, why the heck do I have my gun in my hand? I got a guy right next to me with a machine gun right next to my ear. And I'm like, give me something to put in my ear. Didn't even think about the fact that this guy's going to deafen me. He says, Jim, if the guy's got a gun in his hand, I'm just going to give him 1 burst, 3 rounds, right in the chest. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Strange the things you think about. But I'm like, if this guy makes me deaf, I'm retiring with a pension, tax-free. But what happened was, so we're getting in our earpieces the update. Okay, the guy's standing at the door. I'm like, my hand is on the doorknob. My hands are shaking now thinking about this. And the guy's standing on the other side of the door, takes his hands out of his pockets, both of his pockets, knocks on the door. His hands are out of his pockets. Be advised, hands are out of his pockets. Knocks on the door. I go 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. I open up the door as fast as I can. He goes like this, both hands like this, and I run and tackle him, knock him over the rail into the shrubs, and I hold him like this. And then 15 cops with machine guns and pistols are standing over him like this. Don't fucking move. And I roll off the guy. I was like, oh.
That's close.
Wow. Because I'm telling you, it's whoever's going to pull the trigger first. Because the guy's got a gun in his hand. If I hadn't heard, and I'm like, good, I'm not going to go deaf today. I'm not going to get shot in the vest. Hopefully it doesn't go through or shoots me in the face because you wear bulletproof vest. But that was the time when my heart beat the fastest in 22 years.
So you tell your kids those stories like obviously years later. What do your kids take away from like the life that you've had, the way they were brought up? Like what would your kids say about you? Say you weren't here tomorrow. What would your kids say about you?
What would my kids say about me today is that I'm a guy that never stopped looking to do better and get better. Look, I mean, I didn't stop even my acting career. You have no idea. That's a great story, and I'll tell you in a second. But I tell my kids when I was young, I didn't waste any time. I made a lot of money because I was in the nightclub business. I sold stuff. I cleaned carpets. I drove limousines. I sang. I did whatever I can. I didn't waste any time. If we were all going to the movies at 7:00 and now it's 2:00, you know, we had video games back then, right? Shitty ones, but nevertheless, they were new to us. But I wouldn't waste my time. I had a friend of mine that had a florist. So if I had 5 hours to waste, I would just walk into the florist. What's up, everybody? Hey, Jimmy. And I put on an apron. Everybody would wave, and I'd go over to the to be done pile. I'd look at the papers, like boutonniere, no. Centerpiece, no. Funeral arrangements, roses and carnations. Oh, I'll do this one. you know, and then you sit there for 2-3 hours. You do your, your floristry stuff, the florist stuff. And then you write your hours on the back of a card. See you later. Now I'm going to come and meet you guys for the movies. And I just worked for 5 hours. But I made $1,000 over the weekend bartending. So I always had money. I always had sports cars. I had a Corvette. I had a Trans Am. I had a 280ZX. I had a Formula 455, had a Ninja. I had a boat before I was graduating from college. I had everything. And when my father said, he used to say, you've had more of, you've done more in your life by 21 than I did in my entire life. Because you want to do things. I used to ski a lot. Want to hear a funny story about skiing? When my dad had the restaurant, on the counter near the door, people used to put promotion stuff, business cards, flyers, and somebody used to leave coupons, $5 off for Vernon Valley Great Gorge skiing. So when I was in college on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I used to get out at 10 o'clock in the morning. I took all those coupons from my dad's restaurant, and when I got out of school at 10 o'clock, I drive about 90 minutes to skiing in Vernon Valley, New Jersey. And I take these $5 coupons and I go to the guys on the line. I got a $5 coupon, give it to you for $3. Oh, sure. Next guy, $5 coupon, $3. So as soon as I had enough to pay for the tickets, I'd stop selling coupons. Then I'd ski all day, twice a week. And then before I left, there'd be people lined up to go night skiing. The $5 coupon, $3 off. As soon as I had enough to buy gas. And I kept the stack of these coupons in the car. So it's all about hustling. It's all about not wasting time and making money when you can. So when I became a cop, I couldn't do a lot of other things. I couldn't be a bartender anymore. You're not allowed to work in a liquor establishment or whatever else. But by that time, I started a family, and my ex-wife was home with the kids. And, so what would they say about me now? Is, I guess I'm just a guy that... what my dad used to say was, when you die, the only regrets you should have are chances you didn't take. And I don't know whether that was from him or somebody else. Another thing my dad used to say was, the only way to get something started, the only way to get something done is to get it started. And that means starting a business, doing the dishes. It's apropos in so many angles of life. If you want to get it done, just get it started. You can't get it. You'll never get it done unless you get it started. And I tell my kids the same way. My son's a musician. They have a band on Spotify and Apple called You Know Me. It's UNOMI. They have great music. They have some great musicians from Juilliard even. And when they started their band, now they're just running into a little problem because there was another band back in the day who had the same name, but they didn't have a copyright. They were in New Zealand or some shit. But so I say, well, whatever you do, just square it away, start a business, get a lawyer, spend a couple of bucks and get yourself out in front of people. And I'm proud of him for putting all his eggs in one basket. The only way I swear to God, there's never been a successful musician or an artist that didn't want to be one. And there's never been a successful musician that didn't work for it. This shit just doesn't fall in your lap. You got to work for everything you have in life. But yeah, I tell a lot of stories because I did a lot and I've done a lot. I've done a lot of different jobs, and everything was, I always looked for the better, for whatever, I always looked bigger and better. So I tell my kids, and believe it or not, it came from Joan Rivers, the comedian who recently died. And she said, I never slept with anybody on the way up. I never did anything wrong. I never did drugs. I never got in trouble. All I did in my career was walk through every door that opened for me. So I tell my son, walk through the open door, son. If you don't like what's on the other side, just walk out. But you never know what's on the other side. When it comes to a woman, when it comes to a business, when it comes to an opportunity, you'll never know what's on the other side of that door until you open it. So, my father was really proud of us, and we were all Eagle Scouts, which is good. And I even promised my sons, I'm like, if you guys get your Eagle Scout, which is Boy Scouts of America, I was always involved as a leader. And I'm famous now amongst the Long Island Boy Scout leaders because my whole left leg is tattooed because it's a big Boy Scout scene. Camping, oh, yeah? It's all peanuts. It's Charlie Brown, the Beagle Scout, And I said, if you guys get your Eagle Scout, I'll get a big tattoo showing you guys marching or hiking and bears and tents. So now when people come up to our troop, they're like, You guys the one with the tattoo, Dad? Yeah, that's me. But you know, it's you only live once. You gotta have fun.
That's awesome. In Canada, it's the Chief Scouts Award. I got my Chief Scouts Award when I
That's
was
the
like
highest.
14. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know what? It says something about a teenager that's able to organize and accomplish something. When my kids, when I became an Eagle Scout, my project, you're supposed to have 300 hours. So between you and all of your friends and all of your planning and your parents or whatever, you keep track and you keep a journal as to how many hours you spent doing this, how many hours you spent doing that. It's gotten really cheap. It's gotten really easy. You know, even merit badges that used to be, you have to keep track. There's one called personal management. You have to keep track of your personal life for 90 days. What did you eat? What chores did you do? How much money did you save? Show me your budget. And nowadays, they just sign these kids off in a week at summer camp. It's like, wait, how can you get that merit badge in a week? It's supposed to be 90 days. Oh, yeah, it doesn't really. But, you know, you can cut corners in life, but eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah.
You know, when you see a kid who really deserves it and earns it, it shows that a 17-year-old can do a budget. 17-year-old can do his own chores, can watch his bank account, can start this, can start that. And, you know, I tell my kids all the time, all the interviews I've ever had in my life, top thing under like hobbies and accomplishments is Eagle Scout. You know, I'm also Order of the Arrow is a service-oriented organization within the Scouts. And there's several levels, and I'm in the middle. But it just shows that I've done service that I didn't get paid for. You know, it was stuff for the environment and for the community. It just I'm volunteer fireman. Like, you got to give back. Got to give back a little, and you get a lot more than you give. That's for sure. And even if it's in your own heart, but you know, when you save somebody's life, or when you're a fireman and you know, you show up and you pull somebody out of a car or whatever else. You know, it was a funny story. I came up to Canada with my not realizing that Canada, you're not allowed to have mace. No pepper spray. So I was at the border one day, and I had a package next to me. It was when I was first coming up, and I didn't really know that you have to open up all packages that come across from the mail, or else you could be smuggling something. Like if I had a package and they said, "What's in the box?" I'm like, I don't know. It's Jamie's. Jamie who? Oh, my buddy. He just told me to pick it up. I'll open it up. This was a laptop that came from my wife that she had bought, an old laptop that didn't have a hard drive, so it was only like $100. She was going to take the hard drive out of her laptop and stick it in this and give it to her daughter for Christmas. But it was a nice laptop, so it was $100. So I have it on the seat next to me. I said, "What's in the box?" I said, "I think it's a laptop my wife bought for her daughter." "Well, open it up." "Okay, Bob." I reach into the middle of my car, take out my police Smith & Wesson switchblade. Whoosh. I open up the knife, and I go to open up the box. Not realizing this is a switchblade and it's a deadly weapon.
And you're crossing the border.
And I'm crossing the border with it. But it's one of the deadly weapons in New York also. The thing was, this is my police knife. I've had it for 20 years. It has saved people's lives. It has saved my life. I've cut people out of burning cars with this knife. You know, you keep it in your pocket for your whole career. Now you have it in case you need a knife. I don't know. It's a switchblade. It's my knife. So I go, whoosh, stilettos out. I go to open up the box, and she says, the customs agent says, "Drop that on the floor." So I'm like, "Drop it on the floor." So I take the box and I drop it on the floor. So she goes, "Are you a jackass? Drop the knife." And I was like, "Sorry." "Pull over." So I'm like, "Any other surprises?" I said, "While I have your attention, I just want you to know that I'm a retired police officer and I consider you family. I would put my life in the line to protect yours. So maybe you could just give me a little discretion." She's like, "Pull over." How's that for discretion? You're not under arrest yet. But I was like, she's like, "Are you crazy?" Like, she's talking to me on the side. "Anything else in the car I'd have to worry about? Any other surprises?" I'm like, "No. But while I have your attention, what level of pepper spray? What level of pepper spray can I have?" Like, "You have pepper spray in the car?" I said, "Yeah." "Where?" "One in that door, one in the middle, and one in that door." So she's like, "Step away from the car." So she's taking the pepper spray. She's sticking it in her vest like this. She's looking around. She doesn't want to get me in trouble. But I'm totally naive. I don't know I can't have pepper spray. Why can't you have pepper spray? How do you protect yourself up here?
There's no bear mace or nothing allowed up here?
Well, there is. There's bear spray, but it comes in a container that looks like a
Fire
beer
extinguisher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's this big. So I recently bought a little thing of bear spray, evidently from like one of the farmers markets. I'm like, is this bear spray? He goes, yeah. I said, but isn't bear spray like bigger? He goes, look at the label. It's a homemade label stuck around. Selling it for $20 as bear spray. Gives me a receipt, bear spray. So I'm like,
Perfect.
okay. Yeah, people are crazy. But yeah, so you know what? I didn't have really any problems after that. She's just like, she gives me like the look in Italian. It's like the mazzari. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you in a second. I'm sorry. I don't know nothing. You know. Well, you come into a new country, you think you would do a little research. I'm like, it's a knife. It's a pocket knife. I didn't stab
Just coming to
anybody
see my
with it.
girlfriend.
Yeah, right. That's it. You know. But
By the way, I'll be back in 3 hours. I'm only going for 3 hours.
yeah, then I'm coming back.
Yeah. This
Taking it to
doesn't
the
sound
keg.
fishy at all. Yeah.
I do this every other Saturday. It's okay.
This has been fun, man. It's been super cool getting to know you and hearing a lot of your backstory, man. This has been awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me here. I can tell stories all day.
What's the best place for people to go if they want to follow you or they want to keep going with your story and see your ride?
Well, you know what? I have a lot of my new stuff on Germanakos, actor. I used to be Jimmy the Greek, and I got sued by Jimmy the Greek Properties of Las Vegas, so I started my Instagram over. Jimmy the Greek, when I tell people that I had a cease and desist order from Jimmy the Greek, they're like, the restaurant? I'm like, there's a restaurant? I didn't know. But Jimmy the Greek was a mobster gambler involved in network television. He's the one that brought gambling to the forefront of sports back in the 80s or 70s. I don't know. But when I started my Jimmy the Greek singing business and website and then my Instagram, I got the cease and desist. I said to my lawyer, what do they want? He goes, they want the website, they want the email, they want everything. So what's it going to cost me? He's like, nothing. I said, so what do I do? He's like, I'll take care of everything. So now my website is called Jim Sings, which right now I just shut it off because I have some other issues with the suit. But on my website, my lawyer changed my name from Jimmy the Greek to Jimmy the Greek. What? I'm sorry, what? I'm not Jimmy the Greek, but I'm Jimmy the Greek? He's like, yeah, we moved the quotes. Your name is Jimmy and you're Greek. So instead of being Jimmy the Greek, now you're the Greek whose name is Jimmy. I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, $1,800. I'm like, okay. So now I have, when I started with Germanakos and it said Jimmy the Greek with 200,000 followers, I canceled it, shut it off. Now I'm just the second Germanakos site, which is jim.monaco.actor. I probably have 600 people, but I don't make any money there. So if you want to see all my clips of my roles and my parts and they Trump or this and that, the other stuff, every time a commercial comes out, I put it on there. I put it on my Jim Germanakos site as well, but that's mostly for the family and the kids to see. You know, you put pictures of your children.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, fellas. I'm around to play golf anytime you want. I live close by. If I can ever come here again and tell more stories.
That's great. I think it'd be an entertaining round, to say the least, for sure.
Yes. Imagine 6 hours with me.
Yeah.
Your ears would be bleeding.
That's the best, man.
So how do we finish this off?
Oh, you want? Yeah, let's close it out with a dad joke. Everybody's favorite segment.
Oh my God. All right. Dad joke. Okay, why can't you see elephants hiding in the woods?
I don't got it.
Because they're good at it.
Perfect.
Definitely overthought that one.
Yeah.
All right, now Kozub. What kind of name is Kozub?
Ukrainian. Ukrainian is where it came from. Yeah.
And what's your favorite food that's Ukrainian?
Pierogies.
Pierogies.
Yeah.
This is perfect. This Ukrainian guy goes into the store, orders a pound of ham, a pound of cheese, and 2 pounds of pierogies. So the guy behind the counter says, "You're Ukrainian, aren't you?" And the guy says, "How do you know that? Because I ordered the pierogies?" He says, "No, this is an auto parts store."
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate having you.
Good having you, man. Thank you.